Hi, it's Wendell, and welcome to the chapter plan for Chapter 8 of the ICND1 Exam Certification Guide. This chapter is a very big transition point in your study. First off, this is the first chapter where you do things or read about things that require hands-on skills with the command line interface. So if you've not yet made your choice on what real gear to buy, whether you're going to use Dynamips, whether you're going to buy a simulator, I would recommend it's time to choose and go ahead and take some action. And if it's a sim, install it. If it's Dynamips, install it. If it's real gear, get the gear, turn it on, make sure you can get access to the command line interface. And you might need to read some of the chapter to understand more how to do that, but be ready to do that in conjunction with your reading. The second thing I'd suggest is, if you haven't already, get yourself a command notebook. A lot of people find it useful to get a separate notebook, maybe a 4x6 or 5x7 size, where you start making a list of configuration and exec commands and keeping yourself a page or so per command, and just take notes on what those things mean. So now's the time to start, since you'll be seeing some commands in this chapter. Next thing is that a lot of the things you see in this chapter become second nature by practice. So it's time to practice. So again, sim, Dynamips, real gear, whatever you're going to use, get used to it while reading the chapter, and then just practice when you have spare minutes. Finally, if you're using the Pearson Network Simulator that's got my name on the front cover, if you will go to my website, searchskills.com, and look for the book page for this chapter, and I've got the URL here on the screen, you will see a list of the labs in the simulator that you should do in conjunction with this chapter. Same thing's true of every chapter in the book that has hands-on related activities. So that's a lot to digest about what to do in regards to command line interface skills. However, on the technical side, there is one thing you need to focus on a little bit more than everything else in this chapter, and that's kind of a gotcha. The term VLAN is used in two contexts in this chapter. First off, there is a VLAN, which is a configured broadcast domain. The set of interfaces and devices in the same broadcast domain have the same VLAN ID. There's also a thing called a VLAN interface, and the VLAN interface is where you configure a switch's IP address so you can manage it. Two separate concepts, but both use the word VLAN, so keep an eye out for those two similar terms with different meaning. All right, so you read the chapter, you start getting your hands-on skills. So then what? Well, as you review the chapter after you finish the first read, you want to check your command list, and you want to do all those commands again on your gear or whatever else you're using for the command line interface. You should probably practice the things in this chapter until you get bored with it. That's a great indicator when you've really got it down. When you think, yeah, I know how, yeah, whatever, I got it. Then you're ready to move on. If it's unclear, it's a good time to ask. And if you haven't popped into the Cisco Learning Network, that's learningnetwork.cisco.com, it's a good time to get hooked up there as well. Finally, there are some mentions of the LEDs, the little lights on the front of switches. Surprisingly, that matters. It irritates me a bit, to be honest, that it does matter. But when you're reviewing, make sure you've got those down, and you almost want to memorize the level of detail that's in the book on that at some point. So make a note of that. Now, when you get through part 2, which is at the end of chapter 11, and you want to review, you should ask yourself, can you configure all the passwords that you'll see in chapter 8? Can you configure Secure Shell, SSH? And you should review all the config and show commands that you've got in your command notebook so far. And for a little bit of help with that, you can always look at the table of contents in the book. Final review. You finished the whole book. You've read the whole book through. What should you be able to do? Well, all the commands you've seen in this chapter ought to be second nature by then. They probably will be second nature just because of the amount of practice you do. But if they're not yet, make sure you practice till they are. And then finally, review the table of contents to make sure you didn't forget to review some concept, because there's a lot of little detail in there.